I would like to review a little some of the discussions that we had last night, but we will continue in the same text of Masechet Berachot on page 15 regarding the law of how we read Shema. Let me just refresh your memory about it. We had Rav Ovadia, who stood before Rava, a student before his Rabbi, and he expounded the word Velimmatem, and you shall teach. That word is read in the text of Shema. ולימדתם אותם את בניכם לדבר בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, that we all read in Shema. And he expounded the word ולימדתם, which normally it would mean to teach. You have to teach your children the Torah. That's what it means. But here he added another learning. Just I would like to stop right here to tell you something having to do with an explanation that on the first stage it comes in a very simple way, that which we call in the vernacular of the Gemara pshat, the simplicity, the simple way. And then we have also the drash. The drash means when you expound even more the meaning of that word. Why is it necessary? Why is it that we are not content only with a simple text, with a simple meaning? It's because we have to keep in mind that the Torah is a God-given Torah. It's not a book that was written by a human being, as some people would like to say, that Moses is the one who wrote the Torah, and Moses was a human being, but there is no God, there is nothing. God forbid. Day by day, we are here to testify that the text of the Torah is impossible. It is impossible that it was written by a human hand. Every day we discover this truth, that the words of the Torah are the words of God. It must be God. There is no other way. Why? Because of the unbelievable logic that is contained in it, that bears many things. One of them, for example, as we mentioned yesterday, the Torah was given without vowels. Why? The Talmud says in Masechet Megillah, the reason is because so that permission was given to the sages to expound it, to read it, and then to give their own insight into it according to the words as they are. Sometimes without vowel they mean other things, such as this one. Take for example Velimmatem, which means you shall teach. No question about it. Everybody agrees that one is under the obligation to teach his children Torah. That is the first obligation of every father. Like it says, the first words that you have to teach the baby is Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha kehilat Yaakov. The Torah was given to us handed to us by Moshe, and it is the inheritance of all the congregation of Yaakov. And then you teach him also Shema Israel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Which means the teaching of the father begin already from the age of the baby. Why? Because it's one of the commandments of the Torah. Velimmatem otam et benechem ledaber bam. One has to teach his children the Torah in a way that the discussions that should be emitted from the mouth of every child is Torah. We should wish that, of course. But then the word velimmatem, which has with the vowel we read it velimmatem. If it is without vowel, you could read it also ulmatem, or velamad tam, or velimud tam. There are many ways that can be exposed in just from one word, depending on which vowels you decide to put. That's the power, by the way, of the alphabet, the Hebrew alphabet. So here in this case, our sages understood that the reason why God gave us the Torah without vowels, because God gave them permission that they should add their own insight, as long as it is something that encourages learning and so forth. Well, it is undoubtable that it has definitely meaning and logic. What was that we learned yesterday? That velimatem could be also interpreted in the Hebrew way, sheyehe limudcha tam, which means, as we said, that the study that you make must be always impeccable, clean. Tam means perfect. Since this verse is brought in Shema, it means that also the reading of Shema must be perfect. So you see now how many laws we have learned already? Number one, that you have to teach your children Torah. Number two, that your teaching should be precise and correct. No hesitation. There is a certain statement in the Talmud in Masechet Berachot somewhere where it says, Lamed leshoncha lomar eneni yodea. Teach yourself to say always when you don't know something, don't say it. Which means the obligation falls upon you to teach your child what you know, not what you don't know, and then you give him anything that comes from your mind. Because he says, Limud Khatam. Here is another law that we learn, that if you teach him what you know, exactly. Don't teach him your opinions. You know, today I had a gentleman who came to buy mezuzot. He was without kippah and he was not religious. He comes from Bet Gabriel. A very bright young man who had apparently many questions. He took at least 1 hour of my time asking me one question after another while I was preparing for him the mezuzot. He was asking me that he is disappointed from the rabbis, he is disappointed from the people there, that why is it that they have to buy mitzvot on the day of Yom Kippur with so much money. When I want to buy a mitzvah for $10, somebody is throwing on $100,000. So I was explaining to him all kinds of things, and Baruch Hashem, he accepted many things. Why? No question about it. And then he started, when I said to him certain things that have to do with my knowledge, so he started to say, well, my opinion is not that. So I told him, your opinion? Well, hold it right there. Let's analyze what you said. Your opinion, do you mean you think you can have you can have an opinion on this? You are just telling me that you don't know. You didn't learn Torah. So how can you have an opinion on the Torah when you don't know? So I gave him my usual mashal. I have, for example, a professor in mathematics in college. He is a professor in mathematics, which means he knows more mathematics than me and you, right? I'm not a professor in mathematics. So let's say he gives me a theory in mathematics, which is his job. And I come to him and I say, I know nothing about mathematics, for example. I don't even know how to solve a fraction. Sum. So I tell him, no, sir, professor, my opinion is that it should be this and this. Wouldn't that be ridiculous? Since I don't know mathematics, how can I explain, how can I tell him my opinion? It's impossible. So I told him, listen, if you are asking questions, it will be my pleasure to answer you. Why not? But if you are going to tell me your opinion about things that I tell you that are based on my knowledge, it would be futile. What you say is not logical. He did agree with me, by the way. He understood, and he was very happy when he left. Thank God. But in the meantime, here what we are learning is, we are not learning your opinion. Your opinion becomes your opinion when you know it. When you know it, it is written. Not when it is just plain an invention of your own imagination or of your own logic. Sometimes your opinion might be true, and yet you cannot say it until you make sure that this is something that has been acceptable. You understand that? It's very logical. That's what we should be very careful how to teach our children. Today, for example, there are many fathers who do not know much. And they want to teach their children Torah, and they allow themselves perhaps to tell them things that are not true, based on their knowledge, on their limited knowledge. They should make sure that this is very wrong. What they teach their child should be given to them clear as a whistle. שיהיה לימודך תם. Let your study be always clear. Not something that has to do with your own logic. Even if your logic could be respected, no question about it. But when it comes to teachings of the Torah, you have to know what you're saying. No wonder why all the rabbis are the efficient rabbis. Usually they always, when they tell you something, they give you a source. Why is it that they tell you, I'm telling you a certain explanation, and then I tell you this is written in this page and this page. Why do I have to do this? This is written in this page and this page. Because that's the way it's supposed to be. I am not supposed to tell you something that comes from me. I'm supposed to tell you something that is based on what I have seen, what I have learned. And that's what we learn here. That your teaching of Torah should not sway away around your own logic and your own opinion. Because the Torah is not only a matter of logic. Even though there is great deal of logic in the Torah is not always logic. Why? Because it is the mind of God. You're talking about your logic versus the mind of God. If the Torah was only going according to logic and higayon is logic in Hebrew, then the Torah would change from time to time, because the logic of a person is there to change always according to the circumstances, according to life, according to the present. Am I right or not? So therefore the Torah does not allow your own logic unless if it is based on something that is clearly stated. You understand? And that's part of what it said, this is another expose of what this teaching means, which we did not learn yesterday. But again, as I said, since this teaching is found, this pasuk is found in the Shema reading, and since Shema has been established as part of the tefillah, as part of the prayer, therefore there is another teaching that goes with it. It's velimatem sheyehe limudcha tam. Bear in mind that that's the system of the Talmud. Always, since the Torah was given without vowels, so we have permission to always expound. Not us, I mean our sages. Why is that, by the way? Why only the sages and not us? Maybe we are grown up enough to be able to give our own insight. Well, I tell you the truth, if it is an insight that is moral and nice and accepted and based on the Torah, there's nothing wrong with it. That's the reason why even today many rabbis write books. Right? I myself, I must admit that I have written more than 20 books. And I'm still going on, and all my life, and all I'm doing is writing. Forget about printing, I'm just writing. Why not? If it is something that is based on musar, halakha that is correct, or an opinion of the sages. But the sages themselves have priority. Why? Because we have a belief that many of their teachings came directly from Moses in Sinai. Remember what we mentioned yesterday, that during the death of Moshe, 3,000 laws were forgotten until Otniel ben Kenaz, one of the great sages of Israel, brought them back with his sharp mind, with pilpul. Ilmale Otniel ben Kenaz she'echzer otam, 3,000 laws were forgotten because of the grief and the distress that was there when the Jewish people experienced the death of Moshe, since they loved him so much. They thought he would never die. You know, exactly like it happened with Esav, the grandson of Abraham, the son of Yitzchak. Why did he turn away from God? Because it happened the day, when did he relinquish his Bechorah, his birthright, to Yaakov? Because on that day, Abraham, the grandpa, who was admired by all the world and looked upon as a man of God, it was his funerals that day. So Esav came from the field, as wild as he was in awe of his grandfather Abraham. On that day he saw his funeral. He says, what? Abraham, my grandfather, also dies? That means there is nothing. And that's how Esav quitted the tradition of his grandfather Abraham and his father Yitzchak and so forth. He became the patriarch of other nations, but not of our nation. So you see, so logic is not to be pursued to the maximum when it comes to Torah, because there are many laws in the Torah that are not logical. Do you agree or not? You know that the Torah does not give us reasons behind 613 commandments, except 2 commandments that I will tell you immediately. There is no logic in any one of them. There are only two commandments that the Torah specifically tells me the reason. One of them is كبد את أبيך ואת إمך. למען יאריכון ימיך, which means if you want your life to be lengthened, you have to honor your father and mother. למען יאריכון, which means this is like a reason. The logic here is everybody understands the logic. Even the nations understand that there is an obligation to respect and honor your parents. That's one of the very few commandments that the Torah tells us the reason. Why, if you do this, your life will be lengthened. And that doesn't mean it will be long in this world. It's possible also. But it means rather that you will have an eternal life. Because when the Torah says your life will be long, does not mean 100 years. Because again, our mind is limited. That's why we think that 100 years is a lot. But when the Torah is the mind of God, is not limited. So because it is not limited, so whenever it says long life, it means forever and ever. By the way, this teaching is brought by Gedolei Musar in every book of Musar. Understand? So therefore, we are not looking for, and the second commandment that came with a reason, I mean, also Leman Ya'arichun Yamecha, is the case of the nest of the birds, that you have to free the mother while you can take the chicks. And there the Torah says so that you will have also a long life. This is a book of mysteries, the Torah. Suddenly, from the most important law to respect one's parents, it drops to the lowest kind of commandment regarding birds. So you see that this is another mystery, and the Torah does not tell me what is the meaning of that mystery, right or not? So you see that the Torah, you cannot look for logic. You go to any law of the Torah. Choose any law. The Torah doesn't tell me why. Why is it that the Torah doesn't tell me why? I mean, there was another case in the Torah in which the Torah allowed itself to say why. For example, do not take too many, for the king, the law of the king that he shouldn't take too many wives. Velo yarbelo nashim. Alright? The Torah says why? Because they will seduce, they will tempt him to a different direction. So what happened? You all know the story of Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon. When he saw this law, he says, not me. Women are going to divert me from my love of God? No way. I'm going to prove to God that even if I take 1,000 wives, they will not succeed to tempt me enough that I should be far from God. And the Torah says, oh yeah, Shlomo, with all your wisdom you have made your fatal mistake. And his mistake was that he took 1,000 wives, and ultimately he even worshipped Avodah Zarah, idol worshipping, with the other because of the influence of the other women. And our sages said, how come Shlomo HaMelech failed? It's because he went according to the logic of the Torah. Because what did he say? He says, well, here the Torah tells me, don't take too many wives. Why? Because they will seduce you to other, they will tempt you to other. That means there is a reason, there is a logic. If there is a logic, I could always go according to my logic. So he went according to his logic and he failed. So that's the proof that the Torah is not asking us to seek logic, because how can we reach the logic? Whatever logic we make out of the Torah, it's not enough, because these are commandments of God Himself. And God is unlimited. You cannot tell me that your logic is going to say it all. Whatever you say could be, even if it is true, it could be only a fraction of the truth. Because the Torah is the mind of God, and the mind of God is unlimited. That's the reason when you study the Talmud, you see before you a sea, an ocean of discussions regarding every single word of the Torah and every single letter of the Torah. If they find that one letter is additional or unnecessary, immediately they are searching to see why is this letter added there. Or if there is a letter that is missing, it's not missing for nothing. You have to look for the reason why it was missing. And that's what the Talmud is for. Because the Talmud understood that the Torah that we read on Shabbat and on Monday and Thursday in the Sefer Torah is a God-given God. Therefore, it is the mind of God that's talking here. So if you are looking for a reason for every commandment, you could be looking forever and ever and never reach the end. Because it's the mind of God. The mind of God has no end.
Yes. If there was no vows, how then would it everybody read the same Torah.
That's why
there was no argument.
Very good. That's why we had great people over 3,000 years ago. The vowels were given to us, by the way, by the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, the men of the great assembly, 120 rabbis and prophets, who had the tradition that they received directly from generation to generation, beginning with Moshe to Yehoshua, Yehoshua to the Zekenim to the prophets to those rabbis. When the great assembly came and they gave us the vowels and they gave us so many prayers and so gave us so many things, them we trust. And that's why after a certain time, when they made up the Mishnah, you couldn't add anything. You cannot add another law. That's what we have. Like the Torah. After the 5 books of Moses, and according to our sages in Masechet Megillah, we find that even they wanted to include Yehoshua, and yet at the end they excluded even the book of Yehoshua. Just the 5 books of Moses, they came to a halt. That's it. That's the Torah. Nothing else. What about the other scriptures? Even the scriptures came to a total stand when they reached Divrei Hayamim, the last book of they wanted to add also the other Sfarim HaChitzonim, the other books. Said no more. The other books you could study if you want, but not to be added in the scriptures, because whatever was written in the scriptures was inspired by Ruach HaKodesh, by the Holy Spirit of God. That's the reason why it is still alive today. Did you ever see a book that existed for so long, and yet it is always printed by the thousand, with all the languages and everything? That's, by the way, according to our understanding, it is the sign that those words of the Torah came from Hashem, and by Ruach HaKodesh. The same thing also with the Talmud. It's already more than 2,000 years for the teachings of the Talmud. It shows that the Talmud is still in existence and in force, going in tremendous force, and every generation they write more and more books just to clarify and elucidate the teachings of the Talmud. That shows that the Talmud itself is also not a book that is equal to any other book, but rather a book that is eternal. And there is a rule: whatever is eternal and there is no end to its existence, it is a proven fact that it has been inspired by the Spirit of God. That's why we believe that all the words of our sages are true. For example, go to Masechet Sanhedrin. At the end, the last chapter, it's talking about the description of the coming of the days of the Mashiach. How will you identify that age of the Mashiach? So the Talmud in Masechet Sanhedrin is giving us all kinds of things that will happen in those days. Now this text in Sanhedrin was written 2,000 years ago, right? And yet it was infallible. Mamash, not even one teaching of them that they gave us, of those signs that they told us in those pages of the Mashiach, which we did, some of it we did in those lectures up there in Union Turnpike. You see that it is true. Everything that we see today was written 2,000 years ago. How were they able to know those things? It's just impossible. How come 2,000 years ago all those sages came to the right definition and description of our generation? Unbelievable. I'll give you one of them, Yosef. Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva lived approximately 2,000 years ago. One of his teachings was, he saw the destruction of the temple. He saw the temple destroyed. He was around it. There's a story of the Shu'al and everything. And then he turns and he says, that wall, he saw the wall of lamentations, the western wall. What did he say, Yitzchak? Kotel ze lo yimot le'olam. 2,000 years ago, a rabbi, he was not even the son of Jews, he was son of converts, and he became the teacher of all Israel in all generations. Rabbi Akiva. What did he say? This wall, the western wall, will never fall. Why? Because the Shekhinah is there. Because the divine presence is there. So there are two things here that we should observe. Number one, it's unbelievable. How did he take the responsibility to say such a thing 2,000 years ago? Rabbi Akiva at that time was in the time of Adrianus, where massacres, persecutions of the Jews were going on. The temple was destroyed. There was only one wall left. How do you suppose that this wall will not be destroyed? I mean, you know what Adrianus done? What he did, this emperor who hated the Jews? He plowed out Jerusalem all the way. He didn't want even a remembrance of Jerusalem to be left. He was so afraid of another revolution of the Jews, he wanted to eradicate the Jewish religion, to the point that he says, let Jerusalem to be completely plowed out. Unbelievable. So what happened to that wall? Why didn't he destroy it? Something happened. Maybe he forgot it. Who knows? All right, let's say in his time, 2,000 years ago, he forgot about the Western Wall, which is illogical, because he destroyed everything that was Jewish. Why didn't he destroy the last vestige of the temple? What I'm telling you is a fact. Is a fact. All right, let's say he forgot about it. Things happened after, let's say a generation or 2 generations later, up to the time of the Crusades. The Christians came to Jerusalem. There were still some remnants of Jews. There were few synagogues. They destroyed and massacred and everything. The Western Wall, what happened to it? Nothing. Nobody touched it. And the Jews kept on praying there. Whoever Jew passed by, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, the famous poet 900 years ago, the first thing that he did was to come and see the Western Wall. I still remember before the Six Days War, when I was just a little boy of 14 years old, when my father Alav Shalom took me on the top of Migdal David in Jerusalem, you know, the tomb of David, and he said to me, look, very far from there, that's where we have our Kotel HaMa'aravi, the Western Wall, the Wall of Lamentations. And I looked at it and says, when will we be able to go there? He says, we cannot go there because it's in the hands of the Arabs. It was in the year 1964. 3 years before the liberation of the wall. Unbelievable. So now, let's go back to Rabbi Akiva. What did he say? This wall will never fall. How did he know? He says, because the Shekhinah is there. The divine presence of God is there. If it's there, it cannot fall. All right? It went through the Crusades. It was not destroyed. It went through the generations of destructions, of desolation, of whatever you want. The Western Wall was still there. You know, I always repeat this. The last few decades, you know, before 1967, when the Jewish army went there and conquered the Western Wall again, and Yerushalayim Atika, they discovered the Western Wall, and it is something that is unbelievable, because they discovered also something else that was tragic. The desecration of all the holy tombs, the cemetery, the old cemetery of Har HaZetim in the Mount of Olives. The desecration of 4 celebrated synagogues. One of them is the synagogue of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, destroyed. The synagogue of Eliyahu Hanavi, destroyed, all by Hussein, the king of Jordan. They even used the marble of the graves to make floors for their own houses, or for the stables of their horses. If they went to such a degree of destruction, they know that the Western Wall is there. It's the most Jewish, the monument, the holiest monument of the Jewish people. Well, destroy it also. I mean, they destroyed everything else. No. Even about 200 years ago, the Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Sultan, he covered the Western Wall with garbage. To a certain, but he didn't destroy it. I mean, you cover it with garbage, destroy it, and it's only a wall. Nobody touched it. Rabbi Akiva was correct or not? 2,000 years ago. I mean, his words were written in the Gemara, in the Midrash Rabbah. You find it in Shir Shirim Rabbah. Everywhere you find his words. This wall of lamentations will not fall forever. Why? Because the divine presence is there. You understand? So now you see, here is one sage, only one sage. How many things we have said in life that never came to be true? But he said what he says was true. And that is undeniable. You cannot say it's just imagination. You know, sometimes they tell, when you explain to them things, they say it's only imagination. Well, this could be imagination, Yosef. This is a fact. How come? How come he was right? And he said many other things, and everything that he said came true. And all the things that were said in Masechet Sanhedrin regarding the end of time, with the Mashiach, the time of the Mashiach, all true. Everything that's happening today, economically, psychologically, historically, any way that you want to, you see it all in the Masechet Sanhedrin, also some of it in Masechet Gittin and others. How did they know? I have no question about it that the words of our sages that were written in the Talmud were inspired by the Spirit of God, and that's why they are called the oral Torah. And you cannot study the written Torah without studying the oral Torah. It's impossible. Because if you study only the written Torah, you will end up to become a reform and automatically disappear from Judaism at all. And that's the point. The point is that we understand that the Talmud is the proof that the Torah is eternal. The proof is a God-given truth. It's a Torah that came directly from Hashem. There's no question about it. We who study the Talmud every day and night, that's all we do all the time, is discover that this cannot be human. This cannot be human. If you learn Masechet Chulin, just the 3rd chapter of Masechet Chulin, doctor, you would go out of your mind to see how did they know those things that even the biggest doctors today do not know. How did they know every particle that is that is inside the behemah, the animal? And they knew the meaning of each part of the animal, every vein, why it is there, why the blood, what is the purpose of the blood, what does he do, what is the purpose of the liver, what is the purpose of the pancreas, and what's in between, what is it that makes them, both of them, work, and if you remove one single particle, it will not work at all, and so forth and so forth. The whole chapter, the 3rd chapter in Masechet Chulin, unbelievable, enough to get you to go wild. You tell me this is a human understanding? It's impossible. They didn't have the means. Even when you go to astrology, what they knew in astrology, not even the astrologers of today know. How did Shmuel know all the secrets of astrology? How did they know matters, medicines that even today, I heard a certain lecture by Professor Orbach in the University of Jerusalem, who said, if we could understand the medicines that are written in the Talmud, if we could analyze them properly and understand them, we would find definitely even the cure for cancer. I mean, they say that Harambam, for example, he knew the secret of and he wrote it, unfortunately, in 3 books. The two of his 3 books of medicines were completely disappeared. And other things, that's not the only thing. So many other things. We discover every day the tremendous genius, which is not just a genius of human genius. It's something that has to be inspired by God Himself. There's no other way. The Zohar HaKadosh says, Vahi Hashem et Yosef, you know this Zohar. Vahi ish matzliach. God was with Yosef, and Yosef was successful. What's the connection? I mean, God is with you, it means the Shekhinah is with you. It means the divine presence is with you. Whenever the divine presence is with you, make no mistake about it. It means you will be successful. That's all. When it says Zacha Shechina ito, it says, for example, a man and a woman, when they live together, if they are Zachu, Shechina Benhaim, which means the divine presence is between them. What is it? What is it that the Shechina is doing between them? I mean, a man and a woman, what they want is to sit down and watch television. And suddenly they tell me that if they are good, if they are meritorious, the Shekhinah is with them, God is with them. What is it that we get from the fact that God is between us? What is the point? I always say this. The answer is very simple as far as our mind, our simple mind, what it can take. All it means is, Vahi Hashem et Yosef, Vahi ish matzliach. The Zohar HaKadosh in Parashat Vayechi tells us, if God is with you, then everything that you do is successful. It's very simple. It means you make money. It means you will be healthy. It means that you will live long. It means that you will have nice children. Success that we want in this world. Well, he says Ish ve'isha shezachu shechina benehem. A man and a husband and wife, if they are meritorious, if they are doing the right thing and everything is between them, fine. Then, if they are in good harmony, with peace and everything, then God is going to bless their marriage because He's going to be with them. Not that He's going to be watching television with them. Probably He doesn't like the shows that you like to see. But it means that whatever you do will be successful. You will have children, you will have these children that will not get sick, and so forth. That's what it means, matzliach. That's the hatzlacha. So the same thing also we say about the writings of the Talmud and the Torah. The Torah lasted until today. That's already 3,300 years since the Torah was given to us. Is there any book that lasted that long? And still being printed? Every generation they printed. They said that they printed maybe 100,000 copies every generation. I mean, what am I saying? 100,000 times that they printed. This means only one thing. The words of the Torah were inspired by the Shekhinah, by the divine presence. Otherwise, there is no success. It's impossible to succeed without the Shekhinah with you. The same thing also. Baruch haba Rabbi Levian. Kavod Gadol. The same thing also with the Talmud. 2,000 years of discussions, quarrels, and many Jews who say, what kind of teaching is this? Even today, if you study, as I said last night, if you study Masechet Temurah that I am studying tonight in Daf Yomi, it makes no sense to today. It's no relevancy at all. And yet, why am I so fascinated? How come I am so excited? Because the system of study is with such analysis, mathematical analysis, with everything that makes something vibrant and exciting is there, such as psychology. Everything. In what? The subject is something that we don't do anymore, because there is no more temple. Tmura. How do we exchange one animal with another that you are going to bring to sacrifice? One of the questions of this gentleman today that came to me for mezuzot was one of the things that I don't like is the sacrifices of the Jewish people in those times. I told him, what sacrifices? You mean the animals? He says, no, human sacrifices. Human sacrifices? We don't, hasve shalom, we have no human sacrifices. It's for us, it's an abomination. The nations dealt with the human sacrifices. He says, no, but Abraham, he sacrificed his son. I told him, but you just quoted right now the proof that it's an abomination by us. Because even though God did tell Abraham, please, I want you to sacrifice my son, your son for him. So, what did he do at the end? So Abraham was willing to do the will of God. Right? And he even prepared everything, and when he held the knife, an angel of God appeared. He said to him, no, stop, Abraham. It's enough. Now I know that you are with me. Now I know that you are loyal to me. I wanted to find out if you are loyal, but God forbid, don't kill your son. And if you want to sacrifice something for me, here is a ram. Right? The ram appeared from nowhere, and that's what he sacrificed. So that's the proof that we abhor human sacrifices. We talked also, he spoke to me about the Mayan calendar and so forth, all this shtuyot. Everything is nonsense except our Torah. But I understand that what I am saying might sound a little bit presumptuous, but the truth is that there is no greater logic than that if you explore it well. All you have to do, I told you once, Reuven, the story of Rabbi Israel Salanter, that once he was held by a young Jewish man, an atheist. And Rabbi Israel Salanter, who was the great rabbi of Musar, he lived about 150 years ago, and he tried to talk with him to make him understand. So the young man says, I will not accept anything unless if you are willing to answer all my questions. At least he was Rabbi Israel Salanter was smarter than me, because today the guy held me for 1 hour with his questions. I should have told him, not now. Rabbi Israel Salanter had no time, so he said to him, listen, gentlemen, you want to ask me questions? No question about it. Just do me a favor. If you really want me to answer every question of yours, you have to accede to one of my desires. Let me take you to yeshiva for 1 year. Yeshiva for 1 year? I don't like those people. He said, well, you want me to answer you all your questions, but really all your questions, willing, but you have to go first. He said, okay. He took him and he threw him in a yeshiva in the proximity, And they were learning Baba Kama, matters of monetary things and damages, things that have nothing to do with his philosophy, with the young man's philosophy. It had nothing to do with that. And yet the guy started to learn, and he learned the laws that have nothing to do with his questions, right? And he learned, and he became a student of the yeshiva. 1 year exactly passed, and like the clock itself, Rabbi Salander came and he stood. I'm ready for your questions, he said. So the young man said, what question, Rabbi? What questions? Yeah. He says, you said you want to ask me all the questions of the world. He says, I have no questions, no more. Let me study, I have no time. That's the Torah. You're not going to look for logic. Do not look for logic. There is logic, of course. But don't make logic as the basis of your interest in Torah. Because you can't expect to have the logic of God to be equal to your human logic. So that's, at the same time, we are told that we have to find logic as much as we can. But we shouldn't think that this is it all. That's not all. Because the Torah is eternal forever and ever. And anything that is eternal cannot suffice for our little mind and all its logic. Because no matter how much logic you will find even more and more and more and more. And this is one of the things that we are learning yesterday and today is one of the reasons. Because he says, Velimmatem, which means should teach, but it means also other things. That's the reason why the Torah was given to us without vowels. So that you could read it also, Velimad Tam. Which means your study should be Tam. Sheyehe limudecha Tam. And then, how come this pasuk is brought in the text of Shema? If it means only that you have to teach your children, okay, the perfect way, the correct way, the clear way, without any imaginative inventions of yours. This pasuk was brought in Shema. That means it has to rub on Shema also. So now, since Shema was established as part of the prayer for the Jewish people, our sages are divulging for us another secret. That Shema, don't you think it's only a reading of anything? It's one of the biggest mysteries of the Jewish people. Is Keriat Shema. No wonder we have to say it 3 times a day. In the morning, in the Arvit, and also before you go to sleep. 3 times. There must be something in these 3 little chapters. The first one begins with Shema Israel. The second one, Vehaya im Shamoah. The third one, Vayomer Hashem el Moshe lemor, Ve'asu lahem tzitzit. What's going on? What is the mystery? The mystery, you are not going to learn the mystery because the mystery is already Kabbalah and already too much for us. But one thing our sages want to tell us, Shiten revach ben ad-debekim. Since Shema is a text not only taken from the Torah, but prescribed by our sages to be read 3 times a day by every Jew, then you must understand that you have to be careful with its words. You cannot read it in a way that the words will interfere with other words. Every word must be counted. Every single word must be counted. And how? There are several words in Shema that interfere with each other, such as a word that ends, let's say, with 1 letter, and that letter is also the beginning of another word, like Bechol Levavecha. If you read it quick, you will see Bechol Levavecha, and then you miss 1 lamed, right? Bechol Levavecha. But if you say Bechol Levavecha, you have distinguished one word from the other. That's called Revach ben ad-debekim. You have to put space between the attached one. These are attached. And then the Gemara gave us several examples. Remember? Yeah. It gave us the first example was Al Levavecha. The second example was Al Levavchem. The third example, Bechol Levavecha. You cannot say Bechol Levavecha. When you read quickly, you say Bechol Levavecha. And that means 1 letter is missing. Maybe you are causing a catastrophe. Who knows? So you have to be very careful that Shema must be read word by word. Also, Al Levavchem. You have Bechol Levavecha. You have Bechol Levavchem. And then we discussed yesterday the mystery of Esef Besadecha, which according to the Rambam and according to the Torah Tmima in his book Mekor Baruch is a proof that the pronunciation of the Sephardim is the best. Because the old Sephardim used to say Eseb Besadecha. That's when you have a problem, that you have to make sure that you read Eseb Besadecha. הכבודו יודע את זה, שהספרדים הקדמונים היו אומרים לא בית, אלא בית. כמו בבל, לא בבל. אז עכשיו בגלל זה יש בעיה, עשב בשדך. ויש למה כשאתה אומר עשב בשדך, אז אין בעיה, כמו שכולנו אומרים, אבל אז היו אומרים עשב בשדך. מכאן ראיה שבזמן התלמוד דיברו כמו הספרדים. כך כותב בעל התורה תמימה בספרו מקור ברוך. ועוד ועוד ועוד. אותו דבר גם כדי same thing also ועבדתם מהרה. If you say it quick, it's ועבדתם מהרה. Yeah, because you have two letters following one each other, they will be swallowed. So if you make sure ועבדתם מהרה, then, and our sages said, if you read Shema in such a way, what was the reward, Yitzchak? Remember? What was the reward? The Gemara? Mitzanenim, lo gehinom. The Gemara says, Amar Rab Chama bar Rabbi Chanina. If you read Shema, the way we described it, and by the way, if you check in the Meiri is one of the greatest commentaries on the Talmud who lived approximately 800 years ago. Here is what the Meiri says. The Meiri says that there are other examples of space between the attached one that we said. Not only what the Gemara brought here. We have, for example, Vehara af Amonai. Vehara af. Now, if you say it quickly, what will you say? Veharaf. Because Aleph comes from the throat. It's easily swallowed. If you don't say Vehara af. Problem is that the Ashkenazim or some of the Sephardim, they don't say Vehara. So every day I have to hear Vehara and then go quiet. I can't believe it, they kill me. Anyway, forget about this. So now the point is, if you say it quickly, Vehara af, you say Haraf. You know what's Veharaf in Hebrew? Lecharef ul-gaddef, you're cursing God, as v'shalom. So you see what happened by reading quickly Veharaf? Instead of saying Vehara af, which means God will be angry. Here you are saying V'charaf, which means you are mecharef, you are cursing Hashem, as v'shalom. That's what the Meiri suggests. Also he suggests that uzchartem, anything that with zayin, you should make sure you say uzchartem, lehatiz zayin. Why? Because if you are not clear about zayin, you are going to say zayin. Like uzchartem, you might say uzchartem. So that's samach, that's not zayin. Again, you miss the whole boat. So you have to be very careful to say lema'an tizkeru, not lema'an tizkeru. Quickly you could say ma'an tizkeru, that's already not zayin, ela samech. And samech brings a different understanding at all, and you miss the whole thing. And so forth. You know, some people, they cannot say yud clearly, unless if they make an effort. I heard it, I don't want to say from whom. But vehayu, they say veha'u. Veha'u. And this is brought in the Meiri. It says in the time of the Geonim, they said, you have to teach people, לא להבליע יוד של והיו, שלא ידמה כאילו והאו. והאו. Like they some say, instead of חיים, they say חיים. Right? חיים. I corrected somebody in Kaddish. So, same thing also, the Yerushalmi says, Benhaim, ve'al leva vecha, and so forth and so forth. And why is it? We still have 10 minutes. Shene'emar, and now you have to understand something. Another thing for your own knowledge. Whatever our sages tell us, even though they were inspired by the wisdom of God Himself, nevertheless, they don't take any chances. They will always bring you a pasuk from the Torah or from the scriptures to prove there, to confirm what they said. What did they say here? Remember, what is the reward of a person who is careful to read Shema properly? Mitzanenim lo geinom. They will cool down the fires of hell for him. Which means, as I say jokingly, if they throw him in Gehinnom because of his sin, they will throw also an air conditioner with it, so that it will not be too hot. But that's not what it means. That's not what it means at all. Because it means rather, we explained according to Kabbalah yesterday, something very important even to repeat. What happens is, when you commit a sin, let's say there is a forbidden woman to you, and now you want her. Your blood is boiling, hot. Every desire that you have, if you committed something that is sinful, it means that you have, you practically exhorted yourself, which means you hitlahavta, you brought a certain fire into you, the fire of desire, right? The Kabbalah says The Mikubalim say that when somebody goes after 120, when you go to heaven, if the sins that you have committed were sins of your own desire, which means you were so much interested, you became enthusiastic about it, then those sins are going to stick to you. They will be right there. They cannot, you cannot get rid of them. That's how they say, because they say in the Zohar that the sins of a person are visible. They will see them in heaven. Cannot hide. We had only one individual 400 years ago, 450 years ago, a man, Ari Kadosh, who used to, when he looks at you, he sees the sins that you committed. That's why people were afraid to even approach him, except he's a very close Talmidim. So what happens? That's what happens. By the way, if you commit a sin, not because you wanted, but because of emergency, or because of an accident, or because you forgot, or because there was no will there, so it's the kind of sins that does not rub on you. It's there, but it does not show on you in heaven. So Metzanenim lo Gehinom means, the cool down your Gehinom means that those sins, if you read Shema properly as we have described, the sins, the Gehinom will cool down, which means it will not be from boiling hot. Because what is it that is required by reading this way? You know, most people, they like to read and sleep at the same time. You know, they use their instinct. That's why they don't watch what they are saying. They let their mouth say everything by itself. But if they use their mind, they have to make an effort, right? Like, for example, when you stand for a silent prayer, right? Depending. You could be solving all the business that you have, the business problems during the silent prayer, or you could be holding yourself, right? And thinking about every word, what it means and how it's said, right? If you do that, if you pray the proper way, by reading everything and by understanding as much as you can, it means that you are exhorting yourself. It means that you are bringing your enthusiasm out. It means that you are causing your blood to boil. That is considered that you have done your best. And in heaven, automatically, whatever you do with heat here is done there by removing, the sins will not be sticking on you. So the Gehinnom, the fire of hell, will not be so hot. Because why is there that they are very hot? Because they have to remove the sins. In order to purge, to purify sins, you have to use a boiling hot fire. But if it's not needed, after you have exercised your own, that's what Kabbalah says. Because you have held yourself, you fought the Yetzer Hara, for example. So you have captured your own Yetzer Hara. Automatically the sins cannot rub on you. And they are easily removed from you. Therefore there is no need for hot water. If you understand what I mean, according to the system of kosherization of the vessels during Pesach, before Pesach, Agala. So you have the system very clear in here also, and that's the meaning of Metzanenim lo Gehinom. That's how they cool down your Gehinom. And this is based on one pasuk. As we said, every philosophical statement of our sages is always based on one word of the scriptures. In this case, it's brought in Tehillim, Perek Samechet. It says this. That's a mizmor, by the way, that we read in Shavuot. Befares Shaddai, Melachim Bah, Tashleg Vetzalmon, Har Elokim, Har Bashan, Har Gavnunim, Har Bashan, Laham Mayera Terat Sedun, Harim Gavnunim. That's a big mizmor that we read the night of Shavuot. So what is it that he is saying, King David? Befares Shaddai, Melachim, Bah, Tashleg Vetzalmon. Here is how we should read it, Reuven. Befares Shaddai Melachim. It's not like we always say, Befaresh Shaddai, Melachim ba. Doesn't mean any sense. It doesn't have any sense. First you have to read it this way. Befaresh Shaddai Melachim, ba tashleg betzalmon. Now let me explain. Befares means inside. Befares means if you separate. What do you separate? Shaddai Melachim. What is Shaddai Melachim? We have here the name of God, Shaddai, right? And then we have the word Melachim. Where does Melachim figure in Shema? Let me hear a nice answer. Melachim is the king, right? The kings. Where do we find kingship in the Shema? Besides that, before you go to Hashem Elokeichem Emet, in the beginning, the very beginning, when you go like this, what is it that you are doing when you go like this? You know, if you know that the law says, Areni mekabbel alai ol malchut shamayim, I am accepting the yoke of the kingdom of heaven. When you say Shema Israel, that's what you should think. Hareni mekabbel alai ol malchut, I am accepting the burden, the yoke, which means you are accepting the Torah and the mitzvot, which is what was given to us by the King God. Shaddai represents the name of God. Melachim is the kingship, which means Shema. If befares, if you are separating the words to say them clearly, you know what is going to be? Ba tashleg betzalmon. With that, with the name of God Shaddai, that you are doing by accepting the yoke of heaven, which is the kingdom of heaven, ba, with that, tashleg. Tashleg reminds you of a word? Sheleg. What is sheleg? Cold. Snow, cold. Tzalmon. What is tzalmon? Tzalmon is Gehinnom, because it comes from the word tzalmavet. Remember another psalm of King David where it says tzalmavet? מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא יחסר, נודה שירביצני, על ממנחות נעלני, נפשי ישובב, ינחני במעגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגט צלמוות, even if I go in the path of Gehinnom of hell, I will not be afraid because you are with me. Right? That's what it, גם כי אלך בגט צלמוות, לא אירא, רע כי אתה עמדי. I will fear no evil. So you see that Tzalmon, which is a derivation of the word Tzalmavet, which means the place of death, which is hell. Tashleg. Tashleg means it will be cool there. Why? Because you have separated the words of the Shema. This is what we learned in this text. In this text of the Gemara, the law itself is good because you could learn in the Shulchan Aruch. But you learned what is the system that is used in the Talmud, that which we call the oral Torah. What is the system that is being used? Number one, your belief that their words are inspired by the Almighty Himself. This way you go into the Talmud with faith, right? With acceptance. Because remember, what was the diplomatic theory which practically gave us the Torah? What made us having the right to earn the Torah? Na'aseh v'nishma. When the Jewish people stood at the mountain of Sinai, when Hashem says, what did they say? Israel Na'aseh v'nishma. What is Na'aseh v'nishma? We shall do, and then we shall understand. It's not like the Goyim, they said, let us hear first, and then we will do. And that's how they did not get the Torah. Because if you are looking for your logic to understand the Torah, you are going to make a big mistake. First, plunge into the Talmud. Understand the system of the sages and go with faith. Then you are going to discover that this is a well, an endless well of gems and precious pearls. That is non-stop, non-stop. So that is the point that we learn from this very simple text of halakha, of the law. That this is what our sages are doing here, to teach us things that we have to believe, but they themselves, they do not rely on their own understanding as great as they are. They rely on the scriptures and what is given to us in the book of the scriptures. Okay, my friends, as you can see, don't worry, those are two introductory lessons that from the Talmud, and then we shall go text by text and reveal to you Baruch Hashem oceans of knowledge and the treasuries of our sages, page by page, matter after matter, inyan after inyan, concept after concept, till the end of time, because there is no end to our Torah. So be well, my friend, till tomorrow night. I hope to see you.